Namaste and welcome. I am Pratim Ranjan Bose and you are listening to my podcast Perspective. In this episode, I will share my views on the urgent need to reform India's Supreme Audit Office, the Comptroller and Auditor General of India or CAG. It is widely held that the constitutional auditor, the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, should undergo structural reforms. In its prevailing status, the institution is a weak link to the growth-oriented, aspiring democracy. Many expert committees recommended changes. Nothing worked because inefficiency has its takers. During its days in the opposition, the Bharatiya Janata Party or BJP attacked the Congress-led government over the mind-blowing loss estimates by the CAG in the coal and 2G scams. Now, the Congress is attacking the ruling BJP over audit reports on the Dwarka Expressway and Bharatmala project. Both BJP and Congress know that the auditor hits the headlines for the wrong reasons. Faulty yardsticks make their assessments politically sensitive. Yet, there is no political consensus to reform the institution and make it useful to the democracy. That there were irregularities in the distribution of captive coal assets or 2G spectrum goes beyond doubt. Former Coal Secretary P.C. Parakh detailed how the coal block allocation was messed up. But the CAG report grabbed headlines by estimating rupees 1.86 lakh crore or over USD 20 billion loss to the national exchequer. CAG used the average price of fuel produced by state-owned Coal India Limited as a benchmark to produce the potential losses. There are many loopholes in this calculation. At rupees 1400 a ton, CIL's production cost is highly inflated due to the huge army of unproductive employees. Over 2 lakh well-paid CIL employees produce only 30% fuel. The contract miners produce 70% of the coal for CIL at a distinctly low cost, using only a fraction of the labor. It means CIL price cannot be a benchmark for private production. Also, the cost of coal should be a factor of geology. At a 1:1 stripping ratio, fuel produced in Orissa or Chhattisgarh is dirt cheap when compared to that in Maharashtra, where 1 ton of coal is produced after removing 7 tons of soil. A seasoned auditor should know all these. But then, here is an organization that is run by generalists and is entrusted to give highly technical views. Auditing is technical and it is not equivalent to accounting or finance. The technical requirements have only increased with the rising complexity of the economy. In mature democracies from US to Japan, government auditors are chosen from the brightest in the field. In India, the Auditor General's position is a preserve of the Indian Administrative Service or IAS officers. They run the show through Indian Audit and Account Service or IA and AS officers. Both are selected through the Common Union Public Service Commission or UPSC examination. As a thumb rule, those who do not get the opportunity in the coveted administrative or foreign service end up in auditing. The general profile is a graduate in history or political science. The IA and AS officers are offered 2-year training before introduction in the service, and with that they start dictating terms on qualified auditors and finance experts produced by the Institute of Chartered Accountants. Following the 2006 amendment of the Chartered Accountant Act, the CAG has its nominee on the Quality Review Board. The story of India's Supreme Audit Office is about enormous power without accountability, and the state-owned businesses are their biggest victim. The CAG enlists professional auditing firms eligible to do primary auditing in state-owned companies. The very same CAG changes annual profit and loss figures of such companies after a huge time gap, causing trouble for retail investors. It is pertinent to ask why the government auditor should not be blamed if its chosen firms fail to do their duty. Why CAG does not approve the quarterly results of listed state-owned companies within the stipulated period set by the market regulator? All businesses raise public money and all are expected to operate within the same set of laws. If a Tata or Reliance can run successful business empires with qualified professional auditors, what value does a Sarkari auditor add to the performance of a Steel Authority of India or ONGC? In private, managers of listed public sector companies often equate government auditing with poetry writing, indicating CAG's lack of skill. While reviewing the scope of reforms in the Companies Act, both the J.J. Irani Committee and the Arjun Sengupta Committee recommended the withdrawal of overarching powers of the government auditor over state-owned companies. They found it infringing on the autonomy of the professional auditor. The Jawaharlal Nehru government, which wrote India's constitution, was not in favor of making state-owned companies a preserve of the CAG. The power was granted to them after pressures from the Public Accounts Committee, which is headed by the opposition. Having said that, India's Supreme Audit Office suffers from constitutional or legal deficiencies in its ability to monitor government expenditure. The lawmakers didn't grant CAG controlling power, thereby denying concurrent auditing of government expenditure either at the national or state level. Concurrent auditing helps early detection of misuse of public money. To make matters worse, the legal provisions allow the governments to follow the archaic single entry accounting, which makes early detection of frauds difficult. Most importantly, law grants CAG less right to access information from the government than the common man, who is entrusted by the Right to Information Act. The Auditor General of India and his immediate office enjoys impunity as his expenditure cannot be debated in the Parliament. But the expenditure incurred on 65 branch offices and 40,000 staff are in the hands of the Parliament. Net, here is a peculiar establishment with huge power and no power. And on top of all, it has very little technical expertise. The technical staff comes through the less glorified Staff Selection Commission and is dominated by generalists from the UPSC. In these days of soft copy accounting, the CAG does not have an IT cadre. It outsources people with knowledge of computers. But such resources are few and they do not enjoy as much authority as the babus at the top. The Deputy Director IT is a borrowed resource and lives in the company of over 600 IA and AS officers. How efficient such an organization can become is anybody's guess. Every year, the government auditor publishes over 100 reports. Only 2 or 3 reports in a decade get attention. The Dwarka Expressway is a huge project combining roads, tunnels and bridges. Each is separate in terms of techno-economics and project planning. Moreover, with new engineering practices coming in, they are not comparable with the past projects. The CAG equated apples with pineapples and became an instant hit. If that is a formula to be popular, then it's a cheap formula. Thank you for listening to Perspective. If you like this episode, please share and subscribe. See you next week. फिर मिलेंगे.